Hello viewer and welcome to the Bible journey, and today we'll be studying the book of Exodus and the chapter is 24. With me on set to help us analyze this particular book are our pastors, Pastor Peter Nyaga. Welcome, Pastor.
Thank you so much.
We also have Pastor Dan Abuya. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, pleasure being here.
And we also have Pastor Kabira Wakabira. Karibu, Pastor.
Thank you, always appreciate being here.
Amen. Now, as we begin, let's have a word of prayer from Pastor Dan.
Everlasting, mighty Father, we thank you and we praise you. The beauty of your holiness, we come to worship through your word. Lord, we pray that you tabernacle with us and bless us with an understanding. The power of your spirit empower us and refresh us so that we can live for you holy lives just because you are holy. We pray in Jesus' name.
Amen. Remember to leave your comments and ask your questions or whatever you want to give in this discussion on the social media pages at the bottom of your screen. And now we proceed to the book of Exodus chapter 24. We want to understand what is the major message of the Lord to us this day. And now he said to Moses, come up to the mountain. And now he said to Moses, come up to the Lord, you and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel, and worship from afar. Now, let's do the introductions first, pastors here. And of course, considering verse 1. Let me start with Pastor Dan.
So the command of the Lord has been given together with the ordinances. You know, the ordinances normally are an explanation of the key, the essentials. And so now it devolves, it rests upon now the children of Israel to accept or deny. God has given his proposition how things should be. So now the children of Israel, they have to affirm, yes, I do, or no, I don't. So that is what is happening. That is the scenario here. And it has to be, you know, God is fair. Lest there is an accusation that, well, this was imposed on me. Well, I don't know what you agreed with Abraham. I mean, I wasn't there. I'm not party to that. So now God gives an opportunity for the descendants of Abraham to own up to the covenant. Remember the commandments we've been talking about. This is about the covenant. So now they have an opportunity to come in, own it up so that they make it personal. Because our God is a personal God. He desires a personal relationship with each one of us. That is what is unfolding here.
Okay, Pastor Nyaga.
I think also it's reminding us that from chapter 20, verse 22, all the way to the last verse of chapter 23, God was dealing with Moses alone. So all that we've been discussing in those two chapters, 3 chapters actually, it was God and Moses. Now is a time for signing the covenant. So when you sign the covenant, you must have a witness. So he calls Moses now to bring in the 70 elders plus these 2 other men, so that they witness, Nadab and Abihu, to witness the signing of the covenant. And Aaron too, to witness the signing. So that, as Pastor Dana said, no, it becomes not a thing between Moses and God, but actually a covenant between God and the nation of Israel. So that's what you're getting here. So we will be dealing more of the covenant and the affirmation of that covenant.
Pastor Kabira, in your introduction also, as you look at the last part, the 70 elders, Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu included, they are to worship from afar. But in verse 2, and Moses alone shall come near to the Lord, but they shall not come near, nor shall the people go up with him. He creates quite a, demarcation still what we have been talking about.
It's not coincidence. We've seen God doing it before. We see God using Jethro to also put leadership in process. We've seen priests being used. We've seen elders being used. So what God is doing, he's establishing that there is an order. It's not order of holiness. I need to say it's not order of holiness. It's not saying Moses is holier than the others, but God is instituting an order for the purpose of the children of Israel to be able to understand, for ease of worship, let me say, for a lot of things. This is not order of holiness. I need to emphasize about that. It's not that the one who is highest is the holiest,
No.
but rather it's for ease of planning and worship and order. That is how I would love to be able to see it. God has decided.
Well, on the same note, is it really not an order of holiness in terms of it's only Moses who appears to be, you know, on that high rank in terms of even holiness, approaching God and talking to God even in the cloud, but the rest have to always observe a distance.
There is no degree of holiness.
Yes, thank you.
There's-
It's either holy or unholy. You cannot have saying holy, holier,
Holy
holiest.
90%.
90% holy. We are all human beings, and then we can only be holy. We cannot say a little bit holy. That has to be very much put in order. We do not have a person, a human being, who achieves some small holiness. I don't know how. You cannot quantify holiness. Let me just be able to put it
in the
like.
tabernacle also, later we'll be meeting
Yes.
this, of course, chapter 25, the introduction of the tabernacle and the rest.
Yes.
As we advance forward, the priests, the common Israelites were to come to the outer court.
Yes.
Then in the inner court was the
Levites.
priests,
Yes.
the
The
Levites.
Levites camped
Then
Yeah.
in the
nearest to
Holy of Holies, nobody was supposed to enter there. What is that? Is not
Functionality. I would say that is
Okay.
functionality.
okay.
You need to be able to differentiate. You know, it's I don't know, maybe my pastors will help me, but I'm talking about I was doing this and God says you need to be able to differentiate holy from common. I mean holy from unholy, common and uncommon. That is the differentiation Christ wants us to do. Of course, in a spiritual angle we'll talk about it. He wants us to constantly work to being holy. That is different. But about being able to say someone, a human being, let me say
holier
a
than
human
the
being
other.
is holier than the other. You can be able to practice, you can be able to do things that are right, better than somebody else, but at no point can you be holier than the other. It is for purposes of function, for purposes of order, for purposes of worship. All of us cannot get into church and say, let us rise up and pray.
No.
One of us needs to be
Has
able
to
to do
pray.
it. One has to be, you know. That is the God, when 1 Corinthians 14:40, God says he's a God of order and plan. That is what he means. Now here, you know, he will not basically tell everybody, come, let me talk to you. What about time to write? What about time to do this? He needs that order to make it easy for 1.5 million people plus their animals and the rest of things to be able to worship, even as the basics. Now let me go back to what he says.
Now, before you go back to that, Pastor Dan, on the same issue.
I think this is a very important concept. As the priesthood of all believers, we need to understand that. Because sometimes you go to the other extreme and cause damage. On the one hand, you know, actually, our concept of priesthood, like as a church, we believe that everybody is anointed of
priest.
God. But it can be drawn too far when you're like, well, even me, I'm a priest too. And so,
I can
mean,
go and-
why is it that pastor alone has to stand up there, you know, and do that here? So the element of mission, once again. Moses wasn't holy. He wasn't called because he was holier than Aaron. Nor were the Israelites. Actually, God puts it very clear. I did not choose you out of the others because you are many or special or anything. It's out of my grace.
Grace.
For a certain function.
For a purpose, yeah. So once again, the agenda, the mission agenda comes in. Have you been in a meeting where everybody wants to be a spokesman? You're going to meet a person and you are trying to put a point. Some other all-knowing
Also say it
guy
happens,
from behind
right, yeah.
also shouts and messes for the whole group. So this is really what is happening here. There are 3 circles here. There is Moses, then there are the elders or the leadership, and then there are the people.
Israelites.
Right here. That is what is happening there.
Okay.
So that hierarchy is purely for the sake of
And God respects it.
function, and God respects it. He's the God of order.
You can go ahead before you come to Pastor. Okay, Pastor Nyaga first. I
I
think
wanted
you
to
need
say something. I
Yeah.
wanted to say something. Why these 2 sons? It's also very important for us to appreciate that these 2 sons were actually sons of Aaron.
The eldest, yeah.
The first eldest sons. And we know, when you get the book of Leviticus, we know these 2 young men have been prepared for a service and a ministry in the sanctuary, which we are about now to see God instructing them to construct.
That's right.
So it's men under mentorship training. But of course, unfortunately, we know what they're going to do in the book of Leviticus.
Yeah, leave that one alone.
And I'm bringing this, we go to the book of Leviticus, I'm bringing this so that we appreciate what Pastor Danny was talking about. Not because they were better than other people.
Right, yeah.
He chose them. And his God says, bring Nadab and Abihu.
And even Joshua.
And
you also see Moses moves up a step
Yes.
higher with Joshua,
Yes.
who will take over.
Yeah.
Right.
So the fact that God chose these two young men and they come to commit a very serious crime in the church, in the sanctuary, and they die, it shows that they were not chosen based on their character.
Exactly.
No.
It's grace.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want just to
you know,
emphasize on that.
Pastor, even now in our contemporary functional hierarchy of the church, this is also what happens. You know, when like a higher level leadership shares something, it is not necessarily that they are holier or all more knowing, but they have a bigger picture of the ministry. If you're at the division level, you have a bigger view of the ministry than at the conference. Then at the GC, somebody has got a global view. So whereas in my church, I'm thinking and my burden is just my local congregation, somebody at the conference is bigger and bigger and bigger, so that all the family of God comes together.
Okay, okay.
Right.
Pastor Kadira, go ahead.
Well, of course, I would have tied it to verse 3, preempting, but yes. When he calls Moses, and then Aaron, then Nadab and Abihu, and the elders, the function of it all is to bring back the message to the people. That's why in verse 3, it ends by saying, and all the people answered with one voice. So you see how it was able, you know, because these ones represent this ones represent this ones represent this, and so if I call the leaders and they answer and pass the message to the others, what has happened is it's been able, the information has been able to flow, and everybody feels represented. So that now when they're ratifying the covenant, you cannot, the Israelites will not be able to say, you know, to Moses. You were represented.
Right.
The leadership, the religious leadership, the political leadership, all of it was represented. I want you to, I would love if our viewers would appreciate the 70 elders and the priesthood being represented and Moses being able to be there. Such that this covenant was not just meant to ratify their religious life only, even their entire life, their whole life. That's why they need elders. And when they move a step forward, it's like our MPs, if they pass a law, we believe by extension they are doing it on behalf of the people. But now they have got to bring it to the people also to be able to ratify. It is easier. That is what that's what the referendum did. People said this and this, and so when all of us accept now this message, we are bound by it. We cannot say it is Moses. We cannot say it's the elders who were able to do that.
Just on more on what Pastor said, Pastor John, just to bring it more clear that actually God is teaching a representative form of governance. So he's taking a few people who will go up on the mountain to represent the entire congregation. And so whatever they do there is binding down here.
Yeah, they will also agree to it. And in fact, they ratify the same and say, okay, it's fine. We are okay with that.
Yes.
Now
Can I say, I know Nadab and Abihu, whenever we mention the word Nadab and Abihu, somebody becomes, something just comes into the mind. Nadab and Abihu are going before the Lord. Don't you think there was so much respect that even if the people who went there, if they have been called by God, it's fine?
That's right.
That's right. That's right. Just think of it like that. It's God who says, come up to the Lord, you and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu. I don't like Nadab and Abihu, personally. I don't like Nadab and Abihu. But anyway, God has called them, it's fine. You just go.
Okay.
You know, I'm just saying as an example, because character is, for them to do what they did thereafter, it must have been some character of some sort of theirs.
That's right.
But God had called them due to their office. I think it's Pastor Nyagu was saying about they were children of Aaron and Eleazar.
Sons.
Yes. So in the end, when God calls them, I'm just going to respect until when God chooses to say, I think you've just done too much. Did God punish Nadab and Abihu in his own time? Yeah. He decided to. So for mine, it's the Israelites had to really respect that I have called Pastor Dan to come and serve me as the pastor of Muranga TTC, for example. I don't like it. But since the Lord called you, you just go represent me. If the Lord sees it's not fit, then he knows what he's going to do.
What is the relevance of verse 4? What Moses does in verse 4 and 5? And Moses wrote all the words of the Lord, and he rose early in the morning and built an altar at the foot of the mountain, and 12 pillars, that's my main emphasis, according to the 12 tribes of Israel. Then he sent young men of the children of Israel who offered burnt offerings and sacrificed peace offering of oxen to the Lord. And Moses took half of the blood and put it in basins, and half of the blood he sprinkled on the altar. Then he took of the book of the covenant and read in the hearing of the people, and they said, all that the Lord has said, we will do and be obedient.
Right.
What's the relevance of especially this altar and the 12 pillars and
and you know, until verse 8, it's you know, giving a description of what it does. After this, we are going to get into now to the rituals of the sanctuary, which now Aaron is going to take over. You will not see Moses again doing this. He does it before, you know, there is an elaborate system set in place. So, but remember, it's a covenant. You know how you ratify the covenant. Remember what we did, Abraham and God. It was bloody.
There has to be sacrifice.
There has to be blood, life.
It was blood. It's life. Life is involved. Blood is involved because a covenant is being ratified. In Abraham's time, you know, when he cut you know, those birds in half. You remember. We didn't have this full setup. Now there are 12 tribes here. Very elaborate people, of course, representing that. Actually, the Bible does say that to each, according to the 12 tribes. So in other words, each representing each of the 12 tribes here.
So essentially, this is binding to all the tribes and saying that all of you are included in this.
That is right.
But they have accepted all the people.
This is right. This is, you know, they are all being now entangled in this covenant. They have accepted, and so it is ratified.
The covenant, God did not get into a private covenant with individuals.
Right.
There are not as many covenants as there were the children of Israel. It is only one covenant. The way we have today, only one law that we need to obey. So, and this cut across every person. But also, I mentioned something here that it was important. You know, the significance of God saying right. You know, since they came out of Egypt, he has been talking and talking through Moses. There's no writing. But now here God says, right. And I think God is saying, this is so precious. This is your life. We cannot just leave it to the recollection of people's minds. And with, you know, with the time and generations coming, things can be distorted. The way I have spoken it, it needs to remain perpetual for the generations to come. That is why even today, this word of God, which was written so many years ago, it is life to us today. Because it was written for the very, very purpose. How it came, the freshness which it had to the children of Israel, it should have the same freshness to any other person, whatever century you live when you read that.
You know, Nick, allow me to speak just a moment as a chaplain. The power of rituals. And I'm speaking this cognizant of the fact that our era right now, you know, we dismiss off a lot of things and we do things very casually. But there are moments in life when we need to create landmarks. Because human beings, we are a forgetting species. We forget very quickly. And so that is why, for example, we have national holidays when we attained independence to remind us what it was, why we were fighting the cost, so that, you know, you are refreshed, your purpose, and maybe that can help you to remain on track here. So here, this ritual is very important. You know, you can imagine they could have said that, you know, all the said, we've done it, and guys, everybody back to their tents. But there is an elaborate ceremony here. It is so vivid, it is so dramatic, it is not going to leave your mind just that easily. Nowadays, how we do it, you know, we cut cake. We are launching a church, a new company, we cut cake and all those things, But the whole point really serving a point in time where we can refer to, and it becomes a reminder of the import of what you got yourself into.
Look at verse.
Can I
verse
say
10.
verse 7?
Okay.
Just as you said,
important, yes.
Book of the Covenant. That's what I wanted to talk about. Then he took the book of the covenant and read in the hearing of the people. Covenant, testament, agreement. It's still the same thing. The few things have been written were worthy of being read. That's the best I can be able to do. You remember, I think it's Pazaran who, when God said write, you remember there was a part, I don't know where we were reading, and then he says, God told Moses, write for the first time. That right, up to this final right, is now the covenant that you're being able, God is saying. And so, the whole of it as it is, I would love you to see the developmental way of the Bible. It wasn't like, let's write all of it, then it will be holy. But for every word God was giving, it was holy. It will be added and added and added until to what now the entire Bible as we have. So for them, they are binding themselves. The words God has spoken from when God told Moses, write, to now, that's a covenant of God. That's an agreement.
Everybody has to hear it.
Yes,
and know what they are committing to.
More like you have to read it. I think when we were doing our constitution, there were copies, for you to read.
All over.
All over, you could get it.
I had
They even they had a small one for so that you know what you are subjecting yourself to.
Yeah.
Many, what God wanted was not a scenario where we'll say, I didn't know. Like many of us said, it is them who voted, it's not I did. It's not.
Others said, some leaders have read for us. And
Yes,
after
Just to say what has not come out from pastors, Pastor Wakabera's
as
thoughts.
you include the sprinkling of blood on the people.
Before sprinkling, you are dealing with the signing. This ceremony is for signing of the covenant. Already the covenant is written. That's why Pastor mentioned verse number 7, the book of the covenant is already there. But it's not binding. It's one way. It's from God. But the children of Israel need to agree to that covenant. They need to sign, to pen the signature on this, so that it can become a binding document. And so the method that God uses to bring the children of Israel into this and have their consent is when the covenant is read and then they respond. So the response is not the signing. And so verse 7 is very key in this chapter actually. Because in the book of the covenant, then he took the book of the covenant and read it in the hearing of the people, and they said, quote, all that the Lord has said we will do, and we obeyed it. That is why they put the signature.
Wow. Let's first of all take a short break, then we resume and continue this discussion. Yeah. Welcome back, our dear viewer. We are still on the book of Exodus and chapter 24, and we have just talked about, we've been talking about Israel affirming the covenant, and there's the last bit that we have not really talked about. Now, the last element of this particular covenant, the affirmation of the covenant, is verse 8, which says, and Moses took the blood, sprinkled it on the people, and said, this is the blood of the covenant which the Lord has made with you, according to all these words. What was the significance of that?
Let me just read what Paul explains in Hebrews 9, 19, 20, and 21. Hebrews 9, verse 19, 20, and 21 says, for when Moses had spoken every precept to all the people according to the law, he took the blood of calves and goats with water, scarlet wool, and hyssop, and sprinkled both the book itself and all the people, saying, This is the blood of the covenant which God has commanded you. Then likewise is sprinkled with blood both the tabernacle, this is thereafter I'm explaining. And according to the law, almost all things are purified with blood, and without shedding of blood, there is no remission. I was emphasizing 19 and 22. The importance of blood. There must be blood to be poured. There must, is what binds everyone. That your life, in your life, you say in your life that I am bound by the words that you've been able to speak.
Will I read for you also verse 18, that therefore not even the first covenant was dedicated without blood?
Yes.
Okay.
And so that blood now signifies the blood of Christ, because our covenant.
What's the significance of sprinkling it on the people so that it's
binding?
So that everyone...
It's sealing. You see, there's a covenant between God and people. And also to mention that this covenant comes with the words of God and in his terms. There's no room for people to add anything to this covenant. He brings the covenant in his own words and in his own terms. Now, we are supposed to receive and accept. So, and because now they have said all that the Lord has said we shall do, now we have agreed to the covenant. So now the sealing of the covenant is by blood, so that it becomes everlasting.
Well, let's...
And blood is life.
Yeah.
Because it pointed to the life of Christ, who would come and seal the covenant of salvation. So it was very significant. It was not just something that was done out of nothing.
Haphazardly.
Yeah.
No. Okay. Let's now go up to the mountain with God. And then Moses went up, also Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel. And they saw the God of Israel, and there was under his feet, as it were, a paved work of sapphire stone, and it was like the very heaven in its clarity. But on the nobles of the children of Israel he did not lay his hand. So they saw God, and they ate and drank.
Right.
Wow. Pastor Abuya.
Right, yeah. For one, I love that, the intro that let's go to the mountain with God.
Yeah.
I just pray that we can remain there.
Amen.
That is right here. So now, this is it. Now the delegation, representatives of the people, now they go to meet with the Lord to affirm that, okay, we have accepted this. So now they go up to the mountain, and this text sometimes has been, construed to mean that, especially where you finished, that now they went and sat and, dined with God, which obviously is not the case. We know that because, number one, when you move forward, Moses is told with Joshua to move a step further, and leave the elders behind. And even still, as you move forward, Joshua remains behind. And Moses goes ahead now, who speaks with God, now he has the tablets and all that, where God actually, now he wrote with his own hand the 10 Commandments, and the rest of the stuff is recorded. So the point is this, the elders are closer, in range, if we can say so, up high in the mountain, and actually they have a meal. It's a fellowship meal.
Yeah.
God is not really seated with there. I wish we could get a variety of versions to read so that this comes out well. So they saw God, and mine says, so they saw God.
Which version is that?
This is a New King James version. So they saw God, and they ate and drank. What did they see? What did they see? Listen to this. Under his feet. That is verse 10. They saw the God of Israel, and there was under his feet, as it were, paved work of sapphire. The Bible is very clear. You cannot see God and live. John 1 verse 18, it says that. Because God is a consuming fire. Just allow me to read quickly. Deuteronomy chapter 4 verse 24. It says that, for the Lord your God is a consuming fire, a jealous God. And when you go to John, now it tells you that you cannot see God and live. It also says the same thing in Hebrews.
It says in 33:20. Yes, much later it says that 33:20 Exodus. But he said, you cannot see my face, for no man shall see me and live.
And who is he telling that?
He's telling Moses.
Moses. Not even Moses, actually.
So the face of God.
Saw God. he had to hide him and show all his goodness, all his beauty. And so it's a qualified seeing. Otherwise, this could be a total lie that you cannot see God. Maybe let's read John 1:18 to bring out that point then. Because the first time I read this, I was a Pathfinder, much younger. And I remember I caused a little controversy with my pastor because I was, asserting actually, you can see God.
1:18.
That is right here. No one has seen God at any time. The only begotten Son, who is the bosom of the Father, he has declared him.
Okay.
So this would be a lie if Moses.
So what they
seen
saw
God, yeah.
is very clear, paved work of
But yes.
under his feet. Under
Right.
his feet. Yeah. And
What they saw, what they saw was the glorious,
yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
the glory of God. What they saw, that is why it can only, if somebody asked you the paved work of sapphire stone, you have an idea,
Wow,
how wonderful it was, glittering. But how do you explain? And it was like the very heavens in its clarity. How do you able, it's not, what the writer is trying to do is trying to picture you how excellent it was, that he's not really referring to the human, can I say the human features that we are thinking about. He's taking us to the excellence of the occasion. It was like the heavens in its purity. Sapphire is in the glittering. They were awed by the presence of God in their midst at that particular time. So the issue is, he repeats again verse, what?
I think 17 brings out
Yes.
now that
The sight,
the
yes,
glory
that
of
is what
God.
I'm saying. The sight of the glory of God was like consuming fire. It was the glory. So when we're saying glories, let me call it the razzmatazz of everything.
Wow.
You just see.
What's that?
The English have the razzmatazz of, like when the president coming, you don't see him, but you can hear the you can feel the president is around.
Until you feel like I've
That is
seen
right.
him.
It's like when the national anthem song is played, everybody rises up. You're in back at the stadium. The president is doing the guard of honor. Yet you're so far, you cannot be able to see, but you can feel that
You saw
presence.
him.
You
saw him.
you saw him in terms of it was just wonderful.
Thank you. I think that is enough explanation for that. Now, then the Lord said to Moses, verse 12, "Come up to me on the mountain and be there, and I'll give you tablets of stone and the law and the commandments which I have written, that you may teach them." So Moses rose with his assistant Joshua, and Moses went up to the mountain of God, and he said to the elders, "Wait here for us until we come back to you. Indeed, Aaron and Hur are with you. If any man has a difficulty, let him go to them." Then Moses went up to the mountain, and a cloud covered the mountain. Pastor Nyaga.
Before Pastor Nyaga,
Yes.
say I want to add this point. Everybody saw God. I don't know. As we are reading here, there is it hierarchical kind of even the vision. Everybody, all the children of Israel saw God,
yes.
but where were they? Down in the camp.
Everybody
down in the
experienced
mountain.
God.
Right here.
They were upper a little bit than the other congregation.
No, the children of Israel.
children of
They
Israel,
were
all
down
of
in
them.
camp,
The children were
but they
down
saw
there.
God because verse 17 says that it says
They
that
just saw the glory up
on the
there
top of the mountain. Yeah, the sight of the glory of God was like a consuming fire on the top of the mountain in the eyes of the children of Israel. Everybody saw God, but now to what extent?
Yes.
The intensity. They saw the glory and they're like, wow, that is God, and they're scared. Then the elders, they also saw God. Then now Joshua.
Then
And
Moses
Moses
goes into
right here.
Okay. Now,
So-
Pastor Nyaga on this.
So that
especially-
statement has not made sense until I finish. I wasn't just stating the statement.
Okay, quickly then.
Yeah, so to be quickly is to say this. So once again, it is the respect and the order of God's work here. To what extent that we are able, all of us, you as an elder, Nick, me as pastor, then the leadership going up. We really need that humility that pastor is coming with you come as a departmental leader and your view is that department. Then there's the elder who has a view of the whole church, pastor the district, upwards. It is simply humility for the sake of the ministry of God's work.
Thank you. Pastor?
I think he mentioned what I wanted to say, that once again, God is bringing out again that pattern of segmenting the church in terms of leadership hierarchy. You see, we have the congregation at the foot of the mountain. We have elders. Perhaps you can say at the middle of the mountain. Then we have Joshua, who is left close to the tip of the mountain. Then we have Moses, who is on the top
up there.
the mountain. You see, this is God doing it. To me, it creates a very beautiful picture of how the church needs to be run even today. And every person should be satisfied, as the word Pastor Daniel said, with his
Their
position. Don't let the congregation not desire the position of elders. And not elders desire the position of Joshua. Not Joshua desire the position of Moses. Neither can Moses desire the position of God. It is this way beautifully so that God can, flow in a coherent manner, to the worshippers, and they are able to appreciate. I also want to say something about seeing God. Indeed, as Pastor has given us about 2 or 3 verses here, no one has seen God. But there are certain times when God has, flashing, like in flashes, people would want to imagine He is. No one has seen God. Moses says, I saw His back. Isaiah and Ezekiel saw, we saw. But what exactly have you seen? It's like that tale of was it an elephant?
The blind people.
And the blind person who touches the ear and says, elephant is a big ear. All those things. But the point is, even today, if God performs something unique to me, I say, I have seen God.
That's right.
I've seen
It's a common phrase.
Basically what you mean.
I have seen God. Because there's something unique that has happened, and this can only be the hand of God. So when people say we saw God, it refers to the scene. That was a unique
encounter.
A unique encounter. It cannot be something normal. That must be God. So we may not have seen an individual, an object that can refer to God. But what was happening there, that is what we can call God. And even when here they say we saw the foot, calling what?
Yeah, the feet.
The feet.
Under the feet.
Yeah, under the feet. Yeah, under the feet, the sapphire.
Sapphire stone, yeah.
It means perhaps the only thing they would have seen is something that appeared like legs of a human being, which was standing on something. But we cannot say here they saw they could have expressed, we have seen, he has 2 eyes.
Yeah.
Or he has 3 eyes,
Right.
Yeah,
they said we saw something under his feet. And we cannot tell the extent of, what they saw as being his feet. The length from the toes or from the feet. We cannot exactly tell whether it was coming up to what length, the knees or to what.
Actually, they didn't see the feet. They saw
No. We can also dismiss. We cannot dismiss that they didn't see the feet, because when you say I saw something under the feet, it means you also able to see the feet. How do you find the feet without seeing the feet?
Okay.
So they saw the feet.
Yeah.
But then we cannot tell to what extent.
Okay. Thank you for that. And look at we were talking about leadership in I think was it chapter 21?
But also to appreciate God we are talking about here is God the Son. It's Jesus Christ. This should be very, very clear.
It's
it's
so
Jesus
we
Christ.
are talking about Christ.
Yeah,
not-
this is Christ.
Okay,
This is Christ.
Okay.
Yeah.
At least we later saw him. Okay. Now in verse 14, and he said to his elders, "Wait here for us until we come back to you. Indeed, Aaron and Hur are with you. If any man has a difficulty, let him go to them." Moses has really mastered the art of delegation in leadership.
I'm telling you. And you see, Jethro was a good teacher.
Yeah.
Right here. This was a lesson that he grasped well. Because they were going for quite some time, actually. Like 40
days.
40
they
days
were up the
and
mountain.
40 nights.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. It was a long, can you imagine writing all these transcripts, the ordinances, because God wrote the 10 Commandments, but Moses,
And in the technology of those days.
right.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that also tells you, as John testifies, that even all the details were not listed here. So God gave articulate instructions about this. But something I wanted also
So
to
they
know.
were up there for 40 days.
Yeah, where is that?
Yeah, it's for Moses stayed on the mountain for 40 days. You see what the Bible.
The last
picture-
verse.
Yeah, the last verse 18.
Okay.
The picture the Bible
Yeah.
creates.
Yeah.
Okay, God has invited elders Joshua and Moses up the mountain. They all climbed the mountain. But each group has a position on that mountain
exactly.
where they can.
They have their
There's a
level.
boundary. But they remain there.
40 days and
For
40
4
nights.
days,
Verse
they're there.
18 says
And
there.
that's why now this part, and they ate before the Lord, makes a lot of sense. They were not on the top of the mountain eating and feeding God and God feeding them.
No.
Wherever they were left, they were already in the presence of God.
Right.
Because you remember those who are down there, they say, we have seen him. So elders, wherever they are actually in the presence of God. And they were there, they were not fasting. They were eating.
Yeah, yeah.
So they ate. And I want to imagine that God invited them for that very reason, that He may teach them about fellowship.
There is right.
Worship-
A fellowship meal was central by
Yes.
the to a covenant.
Yes.
You know, they ate. Huh?
Yeah.
Can you
Right.
imagine God's provision for that, by the way?
Yeah,
On a serious note, I know it's not a subject, but I'm imagining bring Nadab and Abihu, Moses, Aaron, Joshua, 70 elders. Where are they getting their meals from? They're going up a
Around
mountain.
40 days.
And they're eating and feasting for 40 days. I mean, after 1 week, that is when God calls. Even Moses was called by God. He doesn't say, guys, remain here, now I am going. He waits for God to call him, and God calls him after that, those, on the seventh day.
Right.
Can you try and imagine how God has planned all this,
Right.
and yet He knows how He will sustain this entire group for 40 days? For me, that is my own miracle. I may not be written, but I want to imagine there were elaborate systems, and God knew how to provide. Because He didn't say, come, I'll call you for 40 days. So that you prepare, in advance and pack for 40 days. But the Lord is doing all this. He prepares. Something unique is He says, I will give you tablets of stone. But remember, you also wrote.
Yeah.
There is the writing part for Moses, but then there is where God says, Mimi, I will give you the stone of tablets. Then you, of course, you have the other part that you are. God is still emphasizing on this law. He's not discarding the other ones, but He really wants to show this is my character, and I also want you to copy from me this character, as we've been saying before.
And mentorship also comes out quite clearly here
Oh, yes.
on the part of Moses. Apart from just leadership and
That's right.
delegation,
That's
there's
right.
mentorship here. And where is that?
Verse 13.
Verse 13.
So Moses arose with his assistant Joshua. Just that term, assistant Joshua. So he has already made Joshua his assistant. And of course we know what will happen later. Pastor Nyaga, you see mentorship very
But by the
crucial
way, it's
here.
not Moses,
It's God.
It's God.
It's God.
Because there is no way Moses is being told, come up the
it's
mountain.
God. It's God saying, bring this, bring
No.
bring this.
By the way, he didn't mention Joshua anywhere. It's
So he was
Moses
part
who
of the-
decides.
he was part of the elders.
Yeah, he was part of
Oh,
the elders.
he was part
Yeah,
of
the elders are the leadership.
Yes, you see, even the other time when we mentioned about the first time when we met bring elders, we again saw Joshua being mentioned.
Right,
So
yeah.
he was part of that team.
And who decides that Joshua now come higher than the
It must be
elders?
God. It must be God.
It must be God,
must
because
be God.
there is
I thought
no
it
way
was
Moses is
Moses.
tagging
Yes.
along. That, okay, you know what? God has said the other guys to remain. You're my buddy. Yeah? Let's go.
But I also
And-
want to
and we
believe there
appreciate-
is an input of Moses.
Moses, yeah, I also want to believe
Moses
the
would have
same,
said, no, Lord, if I take an assistant right now, it will bring issues. But then with the approval of God, like Jethro said, with the approval of God, he has learned this system, and God, by calling Joshua, also approves of the system in the end. So it's good mentorship, but with direction from
Of
God.
course.
Yes.
Yes.
What I want to imagine is what actually happens today. You see, they have left Egypt, and we have worked with them with a lot of murmurings, you see? So there were good people and bad people. There were people who were struggling to support Moses. Moses is crying, God, what do we do with these people? So I want to believe among the people who came so close to Moses in supporting his leadership was Joshua.
Yeah.
You see, God does not choose you without you demonstrating an ability, because He knows your potentials. It is when in the service of the Lord that God assigns you a higher responsibility, because your faith, He says, when you're faithful to little things, He shall make you in charge of greater
Bigger
things.
things,
So I want
right.
to believe the faithfulness of Joshua in
Yes.
supporting this.
Yeah.
Is one of the reasons why God says, take Joshua.
Look at verse
Son of
16. Now the glory of the Lord rested on Mount Sinai, And the cloud covered it 6 days, and on the 7th day the Lord called Moses out of the midst of the cloud. The sight of the glory of the Lord was like a consuming fire on top of the mountain in the eyes of the children of Israel. So Moses went up into the midst of the cloud and went up into the mountain, and Moses was on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. Of course, we'll be seeing much as we advance. You know, we've just left it at he is in the presence of the Lord. Now, we don't know what happens until we cross over to the next chapter. But I'm just looking at that spectacular and magnificent event that is happening, and the whole mountain is covered by the glory of the Lord. It must have been something very great.
Oh, I mean, and I also want to imagine what they're doing all this. Someone may be asking, so what is Moses doing all this time? He's covered in the glory of God. You know, when we encounter God, what follows is worship. I mean, you've seen guys who get so excited just meeting the president or a governor, they cry.
They even kneel down.
They start crying. They lose themselves. And this is somebody's father, somebody's wife. They totally lose control. They go hysterical. Just imagine now meeting God, covered in his glory.
Yeah.
And you know, the glory of God will come down in an immense way, like a thick cloud. Several times we are told that he will descend on the mountain, cover the tabernacle, and it will take time, you know, days for it to clear out so that you can even see.
Wow.
So really, you can be sure of worship going on here. Moses and all the elders.
And I also want to appreciate I also want to appreciate one thing before we close, that people on the mountain, and we thank God because Pastor Dan said, well, that we may remain there, the mountain. People are eating. They see God, then they start eating. You know, there are many people who have come before the Lord. They are eating, but they have not seen God. Busy eating, but they have not seen the Lord. I pray that we may eat when we have seen the Lord.
Wow. Amen, amen. Now, dear viewer, we've come to the end of our discussion today. I hope you enjoyed this particular study, and we are just praying for you. Keep on also praying for us that we may have an experience with the Lord, and we may come in his presence and eat with him, having seen him.
Amen.